My sister looked right at me and said, "She's just a failed cadet. Couldn't even graduate." My cousin laughed and nearly spit out his drink. They all thought I was a joke. Then, a black car pulled up outside. An army general stepped out, walked straight to me, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Captain Tessa, the Joint Task Force awaits your lead." My cousin froze. My sister stopped talking. Everything changed. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon at my mom's house. She was hosting a family barbecue in the backyard like she always does every spring. The smell of grilled burgers and corn filled the air. Kids ran around the swing set. People were laughing, drinking, catching up. I was sitting near the fence, out of the way, holding a paper plate I hadn't touched. I hadn't seen most of my family in a while, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. I knew exactly what kind of comments were coming. My sister Kara walked past me in heels too fancy for the yard. She was holding a wine glass like she always does, like it makes her more important. She leaned over to my cousin Landon and said, loud enough for me to hear, "She's just a failed cadet. Couldn't even graduate." Landon laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all day. I stayed quiet. I always did. Kara liked to remind people I dropped out of cadet training, and Landon liked to add his jokes. No one ever asked why I left. No one ever cared to know the truth. After I got injured during a field training exercise, I couldn't finish the final phase. My leg was in a cast for 3 months. I missed graduation. I missed everything I worked for. But in this family, that made me weak. That made me a failure. My mom, Jeanette, tried to include me earlier. She brought me lemonade and asked if I wanted to help in the kitchen, but I could tell even she didn't know what to say around me anymore. Kara and Landon stood by the grill, talking loud enough to be heard. Kara said she wanted to lead a unit. Now she probably works at a coffee shop. Landon added, "Better than nothing, I guess. Some people peak in high school." I held my breath. Not because I was angry, but because it still hurt. It hurt that they had no idea who I had become or what I had done since the last time they saw me. They still saw the girl who limped off the field and never came back. What they didn't know was that after I healed, I didn't give up. I trained harder. I applied to a different program. I passed. I led teams. I stood in rooms with people they'll never meet, solving problems they'll never even hear about. But I never told them. I didn't need their approval anymore, and I definitely didn't need to prove anything to Kara. Kara always knew how to pick the perfect moment to embarrass me. It was like a skill she practiced in the mirror. Just when I thought maybe this time she'd keep her opinions to herself, she walked up beside me at the drink table with that familiar smirk on her face. She didn't even pretend to say hi. "So, what do you do now?" she asked, swirling her wine glass. "Barista? Or are you still figuring things out?" I turned toward her slowly, holding eye contact, but saying nothing. Kara wasn't really asking. She was already shaping her next line, ready to throw it in front of whoever was within earshot. That's what she did. Her words weren't about learning the truth, they were about performance. She needed to stay the golden one, the successful one. That meant I had to play the loser. She wouldn't let that image die, even if it wasn't real anymore. "Come on," she added, waving her hand like she was brushing off an invisible idea. "You wanted to lead troops, right? That didn't exactly work out." Landon had wandered over by now, holding a beer and wearing his usual cocky grin. "It's okay," he said. "Not everyone's meant for the tough stuff. Some people do the dreaming, and others do the leading." They both laughed like it was all just a light joke, but I felt my stomach tighten. I stared at the plastic cooler, counting my breaths, reminding myself not to say anything. But my fingers curled tighter around the cup in my hand. I could feel the old frustration building up again. I could have told them everything. I could have laid it all out. How after my injury, I applied to the Strategic Civil Response Division, how I had been accepted into their elite task force, and how I'd been promoted to captain just last month. I could have told them I'd led critical operations, worked with military leaders, and built a reputation that had nothing to do with my past mistakes. I could have said all of that. But I didn't. I didn't because it wasn't for them. I didn't need their respect to know who I was now. Still, hearing their voices, their laughter, felt like being dragged backward through every moment I doubted myself, every silent dinner, every tear I hid behind locked doors. Every time I wondered if they were right. If I really had failed for good, Landon said, sipping his beer, we should set her up with someone. A nice guy. Not military, obviously. Someone with a desk job. Kara nodded. That could be good for her. Something stable. I took a breath. I was tired of the fake concern, the surface-level pity wrapped in smugness. I looked directly at Kara and said calmly, I'm fine. I've been working. Oh yeah, she asked, eyebrows raised. Doing what exactly? Coordination work, I replied. Strategic operations. They both stared at me like I'd just recited a grocery list. Landon chuckled. What, like secret agent stuff? Kara rolled her eyes. So now she's part of a secret task force? Landon laughed louder. The task force Barbie? And there it was again, that feeling of being dismissed, erased. They didn't want to know the truth. They weren't interested in what I had really done. They had decided who I was, and they wanted to keep me there. Small. Embarrassing. A lesson. About what happens when you dream too big and fall too hard. I could feel the weight of their voices pressing on me, not just from today but from years ago. From when I limped home after my injury, too ashamed to even answer my dad's calls. From when Kara told everyone at Thanksgiving that I couldn't handle real pressure and should probably consider getting into retail. From every family gathering where people looked through me like I didn't matter anymore, but I didn't break. Not this time, because in the corner of my eye, I noticed a car slowly rolling up to the front curb. A black government vehicle with tinted windows. The same kind used for special transport. My chest tightened, but not from nerves. It was time that I placed my drink down on the table and straightened my shoulders. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Let them laugh. Let them think I was making things up. I'd spent the last 2 years proving myself to people who actually mattered. People who saw potential in me, not mistakes, and the person stepping out of that car in just a moment, he was one of them. He knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. He was the reason I was standing here today, with a title none of them ever imagined I could earn. The black car pulled to a stop, and for a second, no one said anything. Conversations faded. A few people glanced toward the street, confused. It wasn't the kind of car that showed up at our family barbecues. There were no Uber stickers or delivery signs. It was sleek, dark, government-issued. One of those vehicles. That usually meant something official was about to happen. Landon was the first to break the silence. Who's that? He asked, looking from the car to me, trying to connect dots that hadn't formed in his head yet. The back door opened smoothly, and a sharply dressed officer stepped out. Uniform crisp, posture perfect, presence impossible to ignore. He scanned the yard briefly before walking directly toward me with clear purpose. My heart started to race, not from fear, but from the electricity of the moment. Every step he took felt like a challenge to every word that had just been thrown at me. I could see Kara's eyes narrow. She placed her glass down slowly and turned to face the scene. Landon raised his eyebrows and whispered something to our Aunt Denise, who suddenly stopped chewing. The officer stopped in front of me and saluted. Captain Reeve, he said. General Briggs is outside and ready for your departure. The Joint Task Force is assembled, and they await your lead. It was as if time slowed. The air in the backyard changed. All the laughter, the teasing, the side glances, it vanished. All that was left was silence. Kara's mouth hung slightly open. Landon blinked like he hadn't understood the words. I nodded once. Calm, steady. Thank you, Sergeant. I'll be out in a moment. He saluted again and stepped back. The car door remained open. A signal. The general wasn't just sending a driver. He was here. I looked at Kara. Her face had changed completely. The smirk was gone, replaced by a blank stare. I could almost see her mind racing, trying to rewrite everything she thought she knew. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My silence spoke louder than anything I could have thrown back at her. Landon was still frozen in place. He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe ask a question, maybe make another joke, but the words didn't come. The cousin who had always talked too much now stood speechless. From behind me, I heard my mother's voice. Tessa, she said softly. I turned, and there she was, her hand on her heart, tears forming in her eyes. Captain? I nodded. Yes, Mom. I got promoted last month. She walked up to me, held my arms, and looked into my face like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. You never told me. I didn't want to say anything until it felt real, I answered. Until I had something worth saying. She shook her head, smiling. It's always been worth saying. I'm so proud of you. Behind her, Kara finally spoke. Her voice was flat. You're a captain? Like, in the military? Yes, I said without hesitation. I'm part of the Joint Task Force. I lead a coordination unit. We respond to multi-agency situations, homeland, foreign operations, whatever's needed. She blinked. I thought you failed. I did, I replied. I failed the first time. Then I got back up. No anger. No attitude. Just facts. Because that's all I ever needed. The truth didn't require defense. It didn't need to be shouted to be powerful. General Mason Briggs stepped out of the car next. Everyone in the backyard turned to look. He was tall, composed, and instantly commanding. His presence made people straighten their backs instinctively. He walked toward me, stopping just behind the officer who had come first. Captain Reeve, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Are you ready? I am, sir, I said, standing tall. He looked over at Kara and Landon briefly, then turned back to me. Your leadership has been an asset to our unit. We don't say this often, but your performance has exceeded expectations. I'm honored to have you at the head of this team. Thank you, sir. As we turned to walk back toward the vehicle, I saw Kara take a slow step backward, like she was trying to fade into the background. Landon set his drink down and rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting anywhere but toward me. They didn't speak again. The moment they'd been waiting years to define me with, mockery, small talk, sideways comments, was gone. Replaced by the truth they never imagined. The girl they pitted had become the woman leading the kind of people they'd only seen on TV. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation, and I didn't say a single word more the moment I stepped out of the backyard. And toward the street, everything behind me felt different. The weight that had lived on my shoulders for years, the shame, the embarrassment, the silence, it didn't follow me. It stayed back there, in the eyes of the people who never believed in me. General Briggs stood beside the car, waiting. He nodded at me with quiet respect, the kind you don't earn with titles or medals, but with grit, with showing up when it's hard, and doing the work no one else wants to do. He had been one of the first to see my potential, to see through the broken confidence and hesitation I carried after leaving cadet school. He was the one who looked me in the eye during our first interview and said, "You've been knocked down. Good. That means you know what the ground feels like. I don't need perfect officers. I need real ones." Now, I was one of them. I glanced back toward the backyard. From across the lawn, I could still see Kara standing by the drink table. She hadn't moved. Her arms were crossed, her face unreadable, but I could feel the storm behind her eyes. She had always been the one in control, the oldest, the smartest, the most praised. I had always been the tag-along, the runner-up, the one who needed fixing. Now she was staring at something she couldn't explain. Something she didn't understand. Landon had pulled out his phone, pretending to check something, but his posture had changed. His shoulders were stiff, his jaw slightly clenched. There was no joke left in him now. The cousin who once called me private pizza roll when I limped into Thanksgiving with my crutch had nothing to say, and I didn't need to hear anything from them. As I opened the car door, General Briggs placed a hand on my shoulder. "One more thing," he said, his voice low. "You've done more than earn this, Captain. You've done what most can't. You turned silence into strategy." I gave him a quiet smile. "Thank you, sir." Before getting in, I heard a voice call out. It was my mom, Jeanette, jogging toward me with her hands clasped together like she was trying to hold in the rush of emotions. Her eyes were already wet. "Tessa, wait," she said. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I didn't ask more. I'm sorry I didn't see all of this sooner." I looked at her, not with anger, but with the sadness that comes when someone means well but still misses who you are. "It's okay," I told her. "You believed what they believed. It was easier." "I shouldn't have," she said, her voice cracking. "You were hurting and I didn't push past the surface. I should have been the one to tell everyone to stop. I should have told you that you didn't owe them anything." I took a deep breath and nodded. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Not just for this, she gestured toward the general and the car, but for not quitting on yourself. That was the moment I'd waited years for. Not a medal, not a salute, not even the title. Just to hear my mother say she saw me. And meant it. As I stepped into the vehicle, General Briggs closed the door behind me. The inside smelled like leather. And quiet power. I looked out the window one last time. Kara was still there. Landon had turned away. My mother stood alone on the grass, waving softly, still crying. We pulled away slowly. I didn't look back again. As we drove through the neighborhood, I thought about the word failure. How it had followed me like a shadow for so long. How it had shaped the way people treated me, and how, for a while, it shaped the way I treated myself. But I learned something that most people never do. Failure doesn't have to be the end of anything. Sometimes, it's just the point where the real story begins. For years, I let their opinions fill the silence. I let their voices speak louder than my own. But today, my silence carried something stronger than any argument, truth, because here I was, the same girl who limped home after failing, who cried into a pillow every night wondering if she'd ever be worth something again, now sitting in the back of a government vehicle, being taken to lead a team of professionals who respected me, who trusted me, who followed my orders because they knew I'd earned them. There was no revenge in this. No need to boast or shame them back. Just the quiet power of a story rewritten, not for them, but for me. This wasn't a victory against them. It was a victory within myself, and it felt better than I ever imagined. The drive was quiet, but my mind wasn't. As we moved past familiar streets, the ones I used to walk as a teenager full of hope but weighed down by doubt, I felt a calm settle in my chest. Not pride. Not triumph. Just peace. The kind that only comes when you've stopped fighting to be understood, and you finally understand yourself. The truth was, I didn't need anyone to clap for me. I didn't need Kara to apologize or Landon to respect me. That version of me, the one who chased their approval like it was oxygen, was gone. I had failed once, hard. I had hit the ground and stayed there longer than I should have. But when I got up, I didn't just return to who I was. I became someone stronger. Someone they couldn't recognize, and that was okay. I thought back to that awful day at cadet school. The crack of my leg when I fell. The silence that followed. The way the medics moved quickly but gently. The pit in my stomach when I heard the words, "You won't be finishing the course." Back then, I thought that moment had ended my life. I remember lying in a hospital bed with a swollen leg and shattered confidence, thinking, what now? I didn't have a backup plan. I had only ever wanted this one thing, and it had been ripped away in a single second. The worst part wasn't the pain, it was the shame. I couldn't even call my sister. I knew what she'd say. Told you. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. I applied quietly, on my own, to a different program. I trained through the pain, while they laughed behind my back. I studied leadership. I read strategy books on weekends. I passed tests I once thought were beyond me. I found people who didn't judge me by my past, but by my persistence. They saw value in my effort, not in my titles. One of them was General Briggs. He told me, "You failed? Good. That means you've learned. I can work with that." Over time, the girl who limped became the woman who led, and yet, even after all of that, a part of me still carried those old doubts. I had buried them deep, but they surfaced in moments like the barbecue, when Kara's words found the cracks I hadn't sealed. That's what family can do sometimes. Not always out of cruelty. Sometimes just out of habit. They trap you in the version of you they're comfortable with, but what happened that afternoon changed everything. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to correct them. I just had to keep walking forward. And when General Briggs called me captain in front of them, the truth arrived on its own. It filled the space between us. And for once, they had nothing to say. Later that night, after the mission briefing, I sat on the edge of my bunk in the task force headquarters. My uniform was folded neatly beside me. My badge sat in my hand, the metal cool and solid. It had weight, not just physical, but emotional. This wasn't just a job. It was proof, not proof for them. Proof for me. I looked at myself in the mirror across the room. No makeup. Hair tied back. Exhausted from travel and stress. But behind my eyes was someone I finally recognized, someone I respected. There was a knock at the door. One of the junior officers poked her head in. "Captain Reeve," she said, "the commander wants to debrief with you in 15. I nodded. "I'll be there." As she left, I stood up and took one more breath before stepping into the next part of my story. And I thought about everything that had happened, not just that day, but the years it took to get here, to the failure, the pain, the laughter I had to ignore, the quiet nights I had to survive, the long mornings I had to push through. All of it had led to this moment. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. What I had now was enough. I had earned the respect of my team, the trust of my commanders, and, most importantly, the belief in myself that no one could take away. I once thought my story would end the moment I failed out of cadet school, but this is where it really began, and no one could roll their eyes at that.